Hi, my name's Charles Linden, for those of you that don't know, and for around 22 years I suffered from anxiety and panic attacks, agoraphobia, HOCD, which is often called puro. I had ROCD, which is another form of puro. I had panic disorder, an eating disorder, health anxiety, emetophobia, and all kinds of manifestations of anxiety. At the age of 26, I cured that. And then since then, in fact, about 6 months after I was recovered, I've dedicated my life to helping other sufferers to completely recover from these conditions. And they do. And they do so using science, using the science of the human body, the science of anxiety, the fear disorder, which causes all of these manifestations. And it's extremely simple to do that when you know how. This video is about Puro. Now, look, this is a really sensitive subject because a lot of people are told or believe that they're suffering from some kind of mental illness. They probably know that they have anxiety, but they also probably have been told that they're suffering from depression and that this is what causes these intrusive thoughts. And when I say intrusive thoughts, I mean the kinds of thoughts that make you feel like you're going mad. I had them for many, many years. In fact, I had them for the entirety of the 22 years I suffered from an anxiety condition. And I know now, having treated many, many tens of thousands of people since 1997, that there are probably millions of people walking around on this planet not able to discuss what they're thinking because of the scrutiny that would be, that they would have to take on from the psychiatric and psychological profession, and potentially from doctors and even members of the family, if they came clean about the kind of thoughts that they were having. Because the point is, these thoughts make you feel dirty, they make you feel ashamed, they make you feel as if you're going mad. And I suffered them for years. I had them for 22 years. They came and went in their intensity, but the one constant through that entire time really was the thoughts around my sexuality. Now, look, I am completely heterosexual. I know that. I've always known that of myself. I've never been attracted to males, always females. I'm very happily married and I've got 2 kids now. And it's never been a legitimate thought of mine that I would want to be with somebody from the same sex. But during the years I had with anxiety, and certainly during those years when I became more sexually aware, maybe from the age of 11 or 12 onwards, until I was 26 and I recovered, I would have these inappropriate thoughts about same-sex sex and interactions with men. Now, look, I was a big, strong rugby player. At the time, we were sharing communal baths. I knew what I was. I had girlfriends and a few and very pretty girlfriends that, I'd be playing rugby and they'd be stood on the sideline. But then when I got back to the changing room, I'd be getting undressed to get in the showers or in the communal baths. And I'd be thinking, but what if I'm gay? What if I fancy him? What if I really want men? And there are many, many men and women of all sexualities all over the world walking around having these thoughts constantly and questioning their sexuality. Well, of course, when they then go and ask people about why they're having these thoughts, psychologists will say, well, have you thought about having sex with people of the same sex? Is it something that you consider? No, not really, but I keep having these thoughts. I'm worried that maybe that's what is happening. We've had people at our retreats. In fact, we once had a married couple, 2 women, a lesbian couple who both had Puro. So they came into the session with me and they were sat there, and I didn't actually know they were together to start with, because it was the first day of the retreat. And both of them vocalized that they were having thoughts about, HOCD thoughts. By the way, I hate these acronyms. HOCD, where did it come from? Puro, POCD, ROCD. All these acronyms are just, they're make-believe. They're not actually indicative of anything in particular. They just describe the experience. And these two women were sat there, and one of them said to me, the problem is I am gay. So I have thoughts about what if I want to be with a man? And then her wife actually piped up and said exactly the same thing. And of course, it was causing huge conflict between them because in their minds they were both questioning their sexuality, and because they both they knew that they were gay, they knew they only wanted to be with each other, and they loved each other very much. But the problem was these intrusive thoughts kept driving them to try and believe something completely different. I've helped people of all ages having these thoughts. So that's the HOCD thing. And again, the acronyms, I don't believe in these acronyms. I don't agree with their use, but they do describe what people are experiencing. But, homosexual OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder around homosexuality, that's not exactly what we're talking about here. We're talking about something that makes you have an obsessive focus on the opposite to your sexuality, because you know what you are, at least when you know what you are, when you reach a point in life where you've had sexual experience and you know what your preference is. At that point, it's pretty obvious what your sexuality is. And some people are bisexual, of course. So the problem always is that these thoughts go against your natural tendencies. And if you're of an age, let's say you're 11 or 12, and you don't know what your natural tendencies are because you have no sexual experience, then it can be pretty daunting and worrying. But more than that, as was the case with me, I'd be sat there, looking at a pretty girl thinking, oh, I really fancy her, she's pretty. But then my mind would be saying, but what about him? What if I want to have sex with him? And it was, to say it was lonely and distressing is the understatement of the century. And we've had people at the retreats of all ages. We had a guy once in his late 80s who hadn't seen his own children and had never met his grandchildren, but hadn't seen his own children for 35 years or something like that, because these thoughts had driven him to believe that he had inappropriate thoughts that he would carry out, in which he would carry out the acts that he was thinking about. But they weren't, they were intrusive thoughts. They were puro, they were OCD thoughts, obsessive compulsive thoughts about a particular subject matter. And it was driving him crazy, so much so that he actually got divorced and never saw his kids since the time that happened. Just so sad, because it doesn't take much to explain what these things are. But the problem is, as was with the case of me, that, when I was 14, 15, mum took me to see a psychologist because I was having panic attacks and agoraphobia and monophobia, and I got health anxiety and an eating disorder. So mum took, and of course, I vocalized what I was thinking about these thoughts. And I was having thoughts about HOCD, so I was having homosexual thoughts, but I was also having thoughts around doing things, inappropriate things to other people too, and even, we've had people talk about doing things to animals, and then of course there's ROCD, which is relationship OCD, which comes out as, what if my wife's unfaithful to me? What if I can't stay faithful? And then there's the other ROCD, which is religious OCD. What if there's no God, or what if there is a God? And of course, these things always go to the opposite of what your actual tendencies are. So they make you doubt your true self, in other words. But this isn't because, you've got some kind of mental illness, or because you've got self-doubt, or because you're frail or ignorant or silly. It's because of the anxiety. And I'll explain this in a second. I've just had a message come through from somebody saying, purchased an Inappropriate in 2011, changed and saved my life from pure OCD. Thank you, Charles. Thank you for coming in here. And this works, so this is great. So please comment. But the thing is, people misunderstand what these thoughts are, and in psychology and psychiatry, unfortunately, they aren't taught the true nature of these thoughts. They say, well, it's because you've got anxiety, but they don't understand what they mean. And of course, a lot of people, they'll go to the doctor or they'll go and see a psychiatrist, and they'll tell them about these thoughts, and they'll immediately diagnose them as some kind of delusional thought, or a form of psychosis, or maybe some form of personality disorder, or even something worse. We've heard cases where people have sort of tried to vocalize what they're experiencing, and they've had to answer to the police. Genuinely, but people have actually, family members have actually referred the police to a person who has vocalized having some of these thoughts, because the thoughts were so, I suppose, so sort of socially unacceptable to them. But the problem is they don't understand the true nature of the thoughts. Now you can imagine this, right? You've got a kid of either gender sat there during lockdown. They've developed anxiety. They've become school phobic. I'm just building a scenario here. This is just one idea. And let's say it's an 11-year-old boy or an 11-year-old girl, and they're sat there and they develop anxiety and they're suddenly having these intrusive thoughts. Not only are they feeling chronically anxious for various reasons, because their anxiety has been activated by lockdown and lack of social interaction, all those things, and also the scaremongering that went on during the pandemic. And they've taken this all on board. Their anxiety levels their fear levels have increased, and they've developed a fear disorder. And that point comes when anxiety doesn't switch off. And it only happens to those predisposed to having an anxiety condition. So they're sat there with all these thoughts. And first of all, it's, I don't want to go outside and play with my friends. I'd rather stay inside. I don't feel safe when mom's at work. What if she doesn't come home? What if, what if I'm left on my own? What if I get lost in the park? Whatever. And then it starts to focus on other people. So, the kid's out in the street one day and a friend walks past and he or she thinks to themselves, what if I kiss that person? It's a fear response. What if? Risk assessment. What if I kiss that person? And they run into the house thinking, oh my God, say it's a lad. And he runs into the house and he's thinking, oh my God, I just saw my friend Paul and I thought, what if I kiss him? Oh, does that mean I'm gay? What if I'm gay? What if I'm gay? So of course he's then up in his room panicking about this whole intense feeling that he's experiencing, thinking, oh, I thought I liked girls, but maybe I like boys. Put that same kind of theory or same kind of response to a kid that a boy or a girl that is walking down the street and they see another child and they think, oh, I'm a boy, but what if I'm a girl? What if I'm a girl like that girl? She looks pretty. What if I want to be pretty? Another risk assessment. What if? So they go home and they're sat there and they're having all of these thoughts swimming through their head, and they don't want to talk to anybody about it, and they don't know the true nature of the thoughts. So they're sat there thinking, what if I want to be a boy? What if I want to be a girl? Oh my God, does that mean I've got gender issues? What if I like boys? Does that mean I'm gay? What if I like girls? Does that mean I'm gay? So all these thoughts are swimming through there, but they're all what ifs. They're all part of the fear response. But of course, if you've got nobody that can make sense of these thoughts, which was the case with me. I sat in my bedroom every night thinking, oh my God, what's going on in my head? Am I gay? Am I straight? Do I want to be a boy? Do I want to be a girl? Do I want to be? And all of this is legitimate because we have people of all ages come to our retreats and workshops who say things like, I have these weird thoughts about being a spider. And, when somebody says that, they even smile themselves because they just can't believe in, and I say, well, tell me what you're thinking. Well, I sit at home sometimes. I think, what if I'm a spider? I know I'm a woman, but what if I'm a spider? I say to my husband, am I a spider? Checking, reassurance. And he says, no, of course you're not a spider. Don't be silly. But this woman couldn't get it out of her head. What if I'm a spider? And what if I'm not a human at all? What if I think I'm a human and I see myself as a human? What if I'm really a spider? And it was just such an intrusive, inappropriate thought. We've had nuns. We genuinely, nuns, practicing nuns, very, very devout people come to us and say, I'm questioning my faith. Oh, why do you say that? Well, I'm just thinking to myself, what if there's no God? And it's, again, what if there's no God? It's a risk assessment. So they're not doubting their faith. They're not doubting that they're a human. They're not doubting they're straight or gay. They're not doubting, what they are, what they actually are. They're risk assessing it. But of course, psychology and psychiatry don't know this, so they take you down this route of, well, how does it make you feel when you think about being a boy, being a girl, being gay, being a spider? And it's wrong, because what happens then is, well, I don't know, I'm not really sure whether I am one of those or that way, or and it funnels them down this sort of psychiatric, psychological tunnel of and it isn't even of self-discovery. It's all you're discovering is the risk assessment, and you're being led down this questioning route about your true nature, and it's just so wrong. It should be literally cut off at the pass. It should be. Oh, I'm having these thoughts about being gay. Oh, really? Okay. So 2 questions: are you attracted to men? Are you attracted to women? How do you respond sexually to men and women? Very normal questions to ask somebody who is gay or heterosexual, because usually they know. And if they're 11 years old, of course, you have to be more sensitive about the way you ask these questions. But ultimately, if you detect that somebody's got anxiety and they're getting distressed about having certain thoughts, it's pretty conclusive that they're having puerile thoughts of some nature rather than true questioning thoughts. If somebody says, look, with the absence of anxiety, look, I think I'm gay and I'm feeling worried, not anxious, but worried about coming out, about telling my parents, about telling my friends, about telling my sister. That's a completely different thing. But it's all about the way you pose the questions. Because if you don't ask the right questions, you don't get the answers that elicit the correct kind of diagnosis, and then you don't get the person sent down the right treatment pathway. So if a boy comes to you and says, I think I might be a girl, oh, okay. So this is what we do. Look at the DSM. How do we treat people with any kind of gender dysphoria or gender questioning? Oh, we refer them to this person. We might take them down a CBT route, or we might refer them to a psychiatrist, but we certainly send them to somebody who can appropriately address this in the right way, because this child is obviously has some gender issues. If they've got anxiety issues, they're not gender issues. If they've got anxiety issues, they're probably not sexuality issues. There are a lot of gay people that have anxiety. There are a lot of straight people that have anxiety. There are a lot of trans people that have anxiety. There are a lot of people in every walk of life, in every manifestation possible, who have anxiety. But it's not necessarily about who they are or what they are or what they're questioning or what they're thinking. You have to get the diagnosis correct. And the only way to do that is to understand the science. And that's what Puro is about. Puro is about understanding the science of fear, and therefore understanding the science of anxiety, and therefore being able to lead people to the correct treatment pathway or diagnosis or advice, and it might just be advice, that lowers their fear levels, lowers their anxiety levels, and lets them carry on regardless, but knowing what is going on in their head. And I know from experience that when I went to my psychologist and psychiatrist or anybody else with it, their kind of hands went in the air and they said, oh, we've got to be sensitively discussing this and finding out how he's really feeling. But they didn't understand the core nature of the condition. Nobody ever mentioned this to me. And, we've helped tens of thousands of people. They've been to those same professionals and they have no clue. Not a clue. They don't understand it. They don't know why it manifests. Oh, it's a type of OCD. Well, that's useful, thank you. All anxiety is OCD. You can't separate, anxiety conditions into OCD, puro, panic attacks, agoraphobia. It's lunacy. It's all the same condition. These are just manifestations of the underlying fear disorder. So to overcome puro in any form, regardless of what the intrusive and inappropriate thoughts are, you have to understand the science. You have to understand why the science manifests that way. You have to reassure the person correctly about what it is they're experiencing. And then you have to know what to do about it. And that's what we do every day of the week. So if you've got any issues, contact us. If you're having these thoughts, obviously it's all confidential. All of our staff are trained mental health professionals, psychologists and psychotherapists and psychoeducators who are there because they've mostly experienced it themselves, but also because they are trained as mental health professionals in order to be able to help you in the most efficient way and communicate the solution, but also because they've spent many years helping many tens of thousands of people to quickly and permanently remove their anxiety conditions. And that's what we do that is so special. I don't know if anybody's put any questions down here. I have a controversial question. What do you think about anxiety and chronic stress as a cause of autoimmune disease? Look, brilliant question. Autoimmune disease. There are a number of autoimmune diseases. Most of the people that we have helped have had conditions like Lyme's disease, and some other endocrine disorders that give rise to autoimmune deficiencies. But also people that have got chronic fatigue syndrome, myalgic encephalomyelitis, and all of those CFS type immune issues, post-viral syndrome, for example. But there are a number. Obviously, there are a number of conditions that you would class as autoimmune conditions, as well as conditions that directly affect the endocrine system and therefore the autoimmune system in a particular way. And so there's a sort of a tight knit of interacting physiological experiences and intersystemic experiences. And what I mean by that is, that act on the respiration, circulation, digestion, endocrine system, neurology, and everything else. So that's what I mean by intersystemic. So, for example, if you've got a hormone imbalance, it can cause, sort of a cascade of symptoms across many systems. But the point is that in order to recover from those conditions, you have to understand the science, the interlocking science, and unlock that to create recovery. So, and that is absolutely vital. You cannot treat these symptoms individually and sensations individually with drugs or with therapies or anything else. You have to understand the holistic condition and address it as a holistic condition. So autoimmune conditions are very, very tightly connected to anxiety conditions, because, for example, the way that the digestive tract functions during anxiety is dramatically affected. It's automatically and immediately dramatically affected. The endocrine system, starts pumping because you're pumping adrenaline into the bloodstream. That makes the autoimmune system slightly suppressed, because all of the resources that keep the autoimmune system and all of the other systems in check then become compromised by the fear response, as does your cardiology, your respiration, and every other system in the body. So autoimmune issues are very, very common. In fact, there are a lot of people that develop an anxiety condition that suddenly develop hay fever or allergies, food allergies or sensitivities, or washing powder allergies. And they come to us and they say, I just don't understand it, since I've had anxiety. I'm getting more colds, I'm getting more sore throats, but also I get these rashes and I get reactions to soaps and things like that. Yeah, of course. It's like having a Ferrari. One system goes out of balance and it can set everything else off. Your body is a Ferrari. It's a group of interacting systems that act in synergy most of the time and in balance. But when one goes out of balance, it can set the others off. And the autoimmune responses of the human body are very heavily affected by other systemic and especially endocrine issues like anxiety, because it is an endocrine issue. Does that make sense? I hope that answered your question. And thank you for the question. Guys, anybody listening to this, please, if you suffer from Puro, if you suffer from any form of OCD or obsessive compulsive disorder, and that's what OCD stands for. And the reason I spelt it out is because all anxiety conditions are obsessive compulsive disorders, regardless of how they manifest. Even if it's postnatal anxiety or low mood, they're all part of the obsessive compulsive group of conditions, as is panic disorder and agoraphobia and monophobia and health anxiety and all of those conditions. And if you suffer from any of those, get in touch with us, because we'll show you how to quickly, scientifically, and without any recurrence of your condition, remove those conditions, all of them, fast and for good. But in the meantime, thank you for listening to me. Thank you for the great questions, and we're here for you. Take care.